Hello everyone, my name is Easy and welcome to another episode of Easy Does It, where we take a look at YouTube channels, review them, and give reactions to them, and also sometimes do daily vlogs. Now this week we are going to take a look at a channel called Watchculture Horror. They're from the UK. Nothing against my UK brothers and sisters, but they sometimes view things a little bit differently. Like, there's a lot of UK programs in entertainment that I just do not like. Some of it I do, some of it I don't. It's a miss or hit with the UK. They're not doing bad at all. They got about 467,000 subscribers. They've been on since 2020 of April. They're doing way better than I am. I don't see how people get that much unless they've already got accounts on other stuff like TikTok and crap like that, and get them to come over to YouTube and sign up to their channel. But Watchculture Horror is basically a list channel. They do a variety of entertainment stuff. We're going to take a look at their latest, which is, what does it say? 35 terrifying horror movie monsters with little screen time. So we're going to take a look at this one. See if they get some of these right or if they get some of them wrong. Let's check it out.
One of the golden rules in storytelling is less is more, and that phrase is even more applicable to the horror genre, especially when it comes to sci-fi horror. Even if a movie creature is well designed and intimidating, it can lose its mystique completely if it's overexposed. The xenomorph in Alien and the titular character in Predator terrified an entire generation, despite the fact that both characters were only on screen for a matter of minutes. Hell, the monsters from Bird Box freaked out moviegoers even though they're never seen at any point. This proves that knowing when to show the big bad beastie is much more important than how often it's shown. So with that in mind, I'm Ellie for Watchculture, and here are terrifying horror movie monsters with very little screen time. The Creature by the Roadside.
Okay.
Low-budget British horror extra opens with a father,
when it comes to the Brits,
by an unknown light in the sky.
their voices are either, with their accent, is very sexy, or it's very fucking annoying. And I'm sorry, but this chick, it's very high-pitched and it's very annoying.
The costume of the monster undercuts the tension. After seeing this laughable outfit, viewers
I can't remember. I know I watched the first one of
one jump scare that catches many
Zetro or whatever the fuck it's called.
While the extraterrestrial cruise around the forest, the camera cuts to a couple driving on a countryside road.
But I don't remember much about it.
On the radio, it's easy to momentarily forget about the little
I know there's like
with
3
no
of them.
warning, the camera cuts to the end of the roadside
Excuse me.
just before it collides with the vehicle. To ensure viewers jump out of their skin, the shot is accompanied by a deafening synthesized sound. Okay, yes, so the creature doesn't look great, but the way it's revealed here is flawless. Mrs. Pickman in The Mouth of Madness. In The Mouth of Madness follows private investigator John Trent, who's tasked with locating horror author Sutter Kane. At first, Trent believes Kane's disappearance is a publicity stunt to promote his latest book. But Trent isn't sure what to believe when he stumbles upon Hobbs End, a supposedly fictional town in Kane's work. While there, Trent stays at an inn run by a sweet old lady called Mrs. Pickman. After Trent runs into the creepy locals, Mrs. Pickman seems like the only normal person in town. That is, until it's later revealed that the old bat is the most terrifying of the lot. During one scene, the camera cuts to Pickman's feet, revealing her naked, whimpering husband is handcuffed to her ankle. As chilling as this shot is, it's just the appetizer for what's to come. When Trent meets Pickman again, she's transformed into a tentacled monster, and after watching the eldritch creature hack up her husband with a hatchet, Trent gets the hell out of there as soon as possible. Although there are many, many eerie shots in The Mouth of Madness, Mrs. Pickman's transformation is one of
I don't
the
think I've
best,
seen
or
that
more
movie.
accurately, one of the worst.
So I couldn't tell you anything about it.
Altered States. Ken Russell's psychedelic
Altered
thriller
States,
follows
another one I
psychologist
haven't
Edward
ever
Jessup,
seen.
who uses
I know about it,
hallucinatory drugs
but I've
and
never seen
sensory
it.
deprivation to reach a higher state of mind. Altered States is a real head-scratcher since it deals with atavism, transmutation, incorporeal evolution, layers of consciousness, and other scientific gobbledygook.
It really
making
didn't
the
sound
kaleidoscopic imagery such a blur that it
interesting
can
to
be hard for viewers
me.
to comprehend what they're watching. However, there's one shot guaranteed to be ingrained in viewers' minds. During one of Jessup's trippy visions, he sees a swirl of Christian images, including a Bible, a burning cross, and the Shroud of Turin. These moments are constantly interrupted by a blink-and-you'll-miss-it image of a furry creature with multiple eyes and horns. As the sequence ends, this creature is revealed to be a crucified man with the head of a seven-eyed ram. Before any explanation is given to what this entity is, it disappears, never to be mentioned again. Though the seven-eyed ram shows up for less than 20 seconds, it's the most iconic shot and the biggest WTF moment of the whole movie. Katardin Prophecy. John Frankenheimer's creature feature
never heard of
revolves
this
around
one
the
either.
monstrous bear, Katardin, who goes on a killing spree after being infected with toxic waste. In a nutshell, Prophecy isn't very good. It's slow-paced, badly acted, and contains unintentionally hilarious sequences that diminish potential scares. With that said, it's hard to fault the design of the mutant grizzly, with Katardin's melted face and permanently pained expression sure to make viewers feel uneasy. Also, the big brown bear lets out a haunting roar every time it draws near, which will leave many curling their toes. To really sell how awesome this creature is, Katardin was portrayed by 7'2" stuntman Kevin Peter Hall, best known for playing the titular beast in Predator. By using low camera angles, this monstrosity appears almost twice that size. Even though this towering mutant is a man in a costume, the filmmakers go the extra mile to make it look legit, with the bear rarely seen for more than a second and often obscured by trees and foliage. Katardin is so genuinely terrifying, it's a pity it didn't appear in a better movie.
It don't look terrifying to me.
Few films have resulted in as much secrecy as Matt Reeves' Cloverfield.
Hell
didn't even
no.
mention the movie's
This
title.
is one of the worst
The
movies ever
promotional material
made.
was smart enough to keep the picture's city-destroying monster hidden, piquing moviegoers' curiosity even more. And by the time Cloverfield was released, horror fans were giddy with
I watched that. No, they weren't. Cloverfield bombed.
However, for
It
the
was
most part,
terrible
the picture remains
movie.
obscured. The outline is seen on multiple occasions, but rarely a clear shot.
Nobody likes that fucking,
like it's about to make its grand reveal, the alien moves in another direction, or the camera cuts away. In fact, we
fucking
don't
do
get
our
a
own
shot
video
of the behemoth
camera
until the halfway
bullshit.
point, and it's only when the military
It
begins
was
blasting
dumb.
it over that the camera finally catches a shot of it. Its design is so
About as
unique.
dumb as the
It's
Blair
difficult to register
Witch.
what we've just seen, which makes Clover even scarier. It's still tricky to explain what the heck this thing looks like, even after all these years. Though the extraterrestrial
Paranormal
is seen more
activity,
clearly during
you know,
Cloverfield's
that
climax,
kind of
its
crap
first
where
appearance leaves the
if
biggest
someone's
impression. The Death
using
Angels,
their own
A Quiet
camera,
Place. Few sci-fi
fucking,
thrillers over
it
the
looks
last
like
decade
crap.
have been as atmospheric as John Krasinski's A Quiet Place. After the world is invaded by aliens with hypersensitive hearing called Death Angels, the survivors are forced to live in silence.
I've never
and
heard
as
of
the prologue
this.
proves, anyone who makes the slightest sound will suffer death almost immediately. Thanks to this
Death
original
Angels?
premise, the snap of a twig or the closing of a door is likely to leave
It's not
anyone's
called
hair
Death
standing
Angels.
dead. As such, viewers would be scared of the
That's
Death
not what
Angels,
that
even
movie
if they had
is.
a generic design. Nevertheless, the special effects supervisor went all out to make the echolocating creatures as scary as possible.
That's not what the name
Every
of that
aspect
movie.
Of the Death Angels' physiology, including their sleek armored
Maybe they
exterior,
changed it
hook-like
over there in
arms,
the
serrated
UK.
teeth, and disconnecting
That's not the
skull
name of the
is
movie.
creepy as hell. On top of that, the way they incessantly click to detect their prey is sure to give anyone goosebumps. After being built up so brilliantly over a
I can't remember what that movie's called.
the reveal of the Death Angels
I watched
could have been
it.
anticlimactic. Fortunately, the tension during the final confrontation is through the roof, due to the monster's phenomenal design. The Gremlin, the Twilight Zone...
And I thought the
Twilight
monsters
Zone
in that
movie
movie were
concludes with
dumb.
a remake of the classic episode Nightmare at 20,000
I didn't like
Feet.
them.
In this segment, airline passenger Valentine is doing his best to overcome his fear of flying. However, his panic goes on overdrive when he spots a gremlin on the wing of the plane. As the malicious trickster begins ripping out machinery and tossing it into the engine, Valentine realizes he has to do something before the plane crashes.
The hell are you talking about,
Valentine can barely
gremlins?
see the gremlin
This
due
is
to the
called
heavy
Twilight
rain.
Zone,
He's spooked
the
enough
movie.
to close the window shutter. While trying to sleep,
Again,
he suddenly hears a tapping by his
You
window.
fucking got it
After
wrong.
curiosity gets the better of him, Valentine opens the shutter, giving him his first real look at the gremlin. Though the critter in the original TV series looked pretty goofy, this version is the stuff of nightmares. With his skeletal face, predator-like hair, gaunt physique and toothy smile, it's no surprise Valentine has an instant meltdown when he sees it. Though audiences only catch glimpses of the gremlin throughout this sequence, it's enough to put viewers off flying for quite some time. The Sarah creature,
No, he looked
the
goofy.
Void. In
It was a
Canadian
good
body
movie,
horror, The
but
Void,
he's still
doctors at
goofy
an
looking.
understaffed hospital are preparing to
Real
deliver
cheesy.
a baby when the facility is suddenly surrounded by a mysterious
The
cult,
Quiet
whose
Place.
presence seemingly drives
The
one
one
nurse
with the
insane
monsters
before turning her into a tentacled monster.
that she called the
group eventually
Angel
learns that
whatever.
these incidents were caused
No,
by
it's
one of
called The
seasoned
Quiet
doctors,
Place, you
Richard
dumbass.
Howell, who made
Get
a
it
pact
right.
with an interdimensional entity to resurrect his daughter Sarah. But when Sarah is revived, she has no resemblance to what she once was, and instead of coming back as the innocent little girl that Powell knew, Sarah returns as a zombified heap of necrotic flesh. Watching this festering and bloated mass vomit tentacles onto its victims is a type of nightmare
Okay, I
that
never
viewers
seen
probably
this
didn't
one
know
either.
existed. What makes the Sarah creature more disturbing is the fact that she's a victim. She didn't ask to be reborn, but now finds herself trapped inside the most grotesque body imaginable. And the way she constantly moans and squeals indicates she's in immense pain and terrified beyond measure. Though the Void has plenty of ghoulish imagery, it's the Sarah creature that will cause the most sleepless nights. The aliens, Fire in the Sky. Fire in the Sky centres around a group of loggers who are looking for their friend Travis after he's abducted by a flying saucer. 5 days later, Travis returns to Earth with little memory of what happened to him. Although Fire in the Sky plays out like a sci-fi mystery for the most part,
I really
climax
didn't
feels
like
a
that
walking
movie,
nightmare.
even though it's
Finally, remembering
supposedly
what happened
based
during
on
the
a true
abduction,
story.
Travis relives the
I
moment
just didn't
his
care
alien
for it.
captors performed experiments on him. At a glance, the
I thought it
aliens'
was
design seems
boring.
somewhat anticlimactic, since they have the bulbous head and beady eyes often depicted in science fiction. However, it's not the extraterrestrials' look that makes them frightening, but how clinical they behave during the procedure. The aliens calmly and methodically cut off Travis's air supply, attach surgical tools to his eye, and stuff goo in his mouth, unfazed by his screams of terror and pain. While Travis looks on in horror as a surgical needle gradually works its way towards his eyeball, his abductors refuse to show the slightest sign of empathy. The extraterrestrials don't show up until the 11th hour, but it's easy to see how this scene traumatized pretty much everybody back in the 90s.
The Jackal, 13 Ghosts. This 2001 remake opens with Arthur's family moving into the mansion of a
thank
recently
God
deceased
we got a
relative,
normal
only to learn that it's
sounding
haunted
voice.
by, you guessed it, 13 Ghosts.
I love that
This
movie.
movie has all the hallmarks.
They
of a
could have
shoddy
done
horror
so
flick.
much
Clunky
more.
Dialogue, a convoluted storyline, idiotic characters.
They could have
and
done
choppy
some
editing.
crazy
Most
ass
importantly, though,
sequels
the
and
ghosts
shit.
aren't really
But
that
no.
scary. Save that is for one. Arthur's assistant, Dennis, mentions the Jackal is the most dangerous spirit, referring to him as the Charlie Manson of ghosts. And as soon as you see this phantom, you understand why. Because he's wearing a straitjacket and a metal cage around his head, you know that this guy is deranged beyond measure. With his razor-sharp fingernails, this sinister spook makes short work of anyone foolish enough to go near him. To highlight his further insanity, psychotic screaming and maniacal laughter can be heard any time he's near. As such, the
That
Jackal
movie
leaves
was
viewers
fucking
terrified
awesome.
even before you see him. Now, if you haven't seen 13 Ghosts in a while, it's likely you don't recall much about the other dozen spectres, but it is impossible to forget the Jackal despite his limited screen time. The Entity. The Entity. The Entity centres around a mother, Carla, who finds herself being
I've never
physically
seen
and
this
sexually
movie,
assaulted
but
by an
I
invisible
know about
force.
it.
Even though you half expect the Entity to take on a physical form at some point, it remains invisible from start to finish. This was a bold but rather wise decision, since the Entity's power is left to the viewer's imagination position, which makes the insidious incubus much more frightening. Because Carla can't see her tormentor, she's completely at its mercy, making her feel utterly helpless. And watching this invisible force thrash Carla's house and hurl her across the room with such animalistic ferocity will give anyone goosebumps. What makes these supernatural encounters more petrifying, though, is the fact that they're accompanied with Charles Bernstein's soundtrack, Relentless Attack. Every time you hear this blaring ballad, you know that Carla is in for a world of hurt. However, it's Barbara Hershey's performance as Carla that keeps us all enthralled. The way she contorts her body as she's being tossed to the ground or smashed into walls makes it hard to believe that she's acting at all. Thanks to the amazing music, performances, and filmmaking, the entity scared the hell out of viewers despite never physically appearing. Mother Marcos, Suspiria. In 2018's version of Suspiria, the naturally gifted Susie joins Marcos Dance Academy in Berlin, hoping to become a world-class dancer. However, Susie is seemingly unaware that the school is run by witches who intend to use the students to amplify their power.
Is that what's
the
going on?
Founder, Mother Helen,
I know there was something supposed to be insidious about the
see
school.
Susie have a confrontation with her.
I didn't know
because this remake clocks in at a
ran by
152 minutes, and with the mother only appearing
I've never
at the very
seen this
end,
one.
you might be worried that she won't live up to expectations. But on the contrary,
But I've heard
the mother
about
makes for an unforgettable impression, since she is, without shred of exaggeration, one of the most physically repulsive characters ever put to screen. Every crevasse of her body is covered in pus, tumours, warts, and seeping fluids. As hard as it is to believe, that's not the most disgusting thing about her. Her torso is layered with baby limbs, implying that she's consumed newborns to prolong her life. The way these extra appendages jiggle when the mother lumbers around is bound to turn your stomach. The Witch. The Witch, a New England folktale. Like the best horrors, The Witch, a New England folktale.
Never heard of this one either.
Although the titular villain rarely appears, her presence can be felt throughout Robert Jacobean drama. When we see the family board, it is but a taste of the evil that harbours within her.
I think this is called something else. It's not called The Witch.
Son, his death leaves
maybe over there in the UK, but I think it's called something else.
Sorceress, very little is revealed about her. When William's other son,
I know I've
seen hovel, she takes the form of a beautiful woman.
Something about this movie.
As he approaches her, the enchantress
it's
grabs
not called
Caleb
The
with a
Witch.
decrepit hand before the screen then cuts to black. While William's twins are in the stable, they see the witch slurping milk from the cow's udders. As they approach her, she turns around, revealing her withered demeanour, while letting out a maniacal cackle. Although we don't see much else of our antagonist, we do not need to. The witch appears for less than a minute, but leaves an impression that is guaranteed to last a lifetime. The Smile Demon. Smile. In Smile, Dr. Rose Cutter encounters a woman called Laura who is being cursed by a
Definitely never heard of this one.
Before she has a chance to elaborate, Laura kills herself. When Rose discovers the Smile Demon has cursed her, she worries that she will suffer the same fate. Now, the idea of a monster driving somebody mad by grinning might not sound that compelling, but you can't help but feel unsettled watching Rose being bombarded by leering faces everywhere she goes. Upon a first viewing, you might wonder if the Smile Demon will show its true form. To be honest, part of you probably doesn't want to see what it really looks like. A grand reveal could block the demon of its mystique, especially if it doesn't look scary or convincing. Fortunately, the demonic creature looks suitably piss-your-pants terrifying. In the climax, the demon shreds its outer shell, revealing its natural form, a skinless giant corpse with multiple rows of malformed teeth. Not only is this a chilling design, the rows of teeth are a nice touch, since each jaw symbolises each of the demon's victims. We only see the demon's true self for a few seconds, but it's sure to give viewers a couple of sleepless nights. The Ram Man. Lamb. In this Icelandic folk tale, Maria and Ingvar discover that one of their sheep has given birth to a lamb-human hybrid. Desperate for children, the couple adopt this newborn as their own, naming her Ada. While caring for their daughter, Maria and Ingvar suffer several hardships.
horror
Invar's
flicks
brother sees the child as an abomination and tries
not
to
ever
kill her. And when
watched.
Ada is kidnapped by her mother, Maria is
I
forced
just
to
don't
slaughter
bother
the ewe.
with it,
While all of this is going on,
because
viewers
most
can't
of them
help
are
but wonder the
stupid.
true origins of this wee sheep. The circumstances
Most-
of how Ada
I'm
came
not
to be
talking
so
about just
cryptic,
horror
you simply
flicks.
assume that it will just
I'm
be
talking
left
about almost
unexplained.
all the
As
new
such, it
stuff.
totally throws you off when Ada's
You
biological
know, after
father,
2010,
Abraham,
just
appears out of
it
nowhere
just got
and shoots
raw.
Ingvar
It all
While
got
viewers are trying
stupid.
to process what just happened, the grunting beast takes his offspring by the hand and wanders off into the wilderness. What the hell is he? Is he the devil himself, nature incarnate? Does he represent karma since Maria killed Ada's mother? Or is he just some weird ram man? His appearance may be short-lived, but he packs a rather palpable punch. The Mutant Bear. Annihilation.
That looks dumb.
After watching Annihilation, viewers are left with more questions
Mutant
than
Bear,
answers.
huh?
What did that ending mean? What happened to
Never
the
heard of
important
this one.
character? And more importantly,
Natalie
how am I
Portman?
expected to sleep after that
Probably
bear
why.
scene? In this cosmic mystery drama, 4 scientists, Lena, Anya, Josie, and Cass, enter a terrain called the
Yep.
Shimmer, which causes living
That's
species
the
to
reason
merge
why.
with any organism nearby. And one night, a mutated grizzly attacks the quartet, killing Cass in the process. When the bear follows the remaining 3 scientists
Feminist
into a cabin,
movie.
we get our first proper glimpse of the carnivorous chimera. Although the bear's body seems relatively normal, the skin on its head has eroded away, revealing a human-like skull with teeth embedded into its own. It's not the bear's abnormal face
that
looks
looks
so,
stupid.
but its voice. Because the abomination came into contact with Cass, it absorbed her DNA.
Terrible.
Due to this, we hear Cass's dying screams
Listen.
every time the creature opens its
And
mouth.
this is
Even
for
though
all
the
your
concept of a
UK
skeletal
people.
bear is rather freaky, hearing one cry
If you're
out,
gonna
"Help me," in
do
a human
horror
voice, well, that is
flicks,
pure nightmare
you need
fuel.
to look
The
at
man
the
with fire
80s.
in his face.
Not these
Insidious.
new ones, because
Jump
they say,
scares get a bad
I
rap,
hate
so they're rather hard to
Insidious,
pull off
the
without coming
Insidious
across as
films.
forced. But
They
if this
suck.
scare tactic is executed right,
I think I
it can be the
watched
most
1 or
memorable
2
part
of
a
them, and they
movie.
were
Few
just,
features
they
demonstrate
were
this
terrible.
better than Insidious. In the scene in question, parents Josh and Renee have become concerned for their son
Just
Dalton,
dumb.
who's fallen into a coma. While Josh speaks to his mother about Dalton's condition, she mentions a nightmare that she had of a red-faced demon called
The
Man with
80s
Fire
was the
in his
greatest
face. As she looks
decade
up, she sees the very
ever
same demonic
in
figure
our
staring behind
history,
Josh.
world
Because the scene
history.
takes place in midday in a brightly lit room, you're not expecting a jump scare, making the
Especially
shot even
when it
more
comes to
effective.
80s
Even though
horror.
most of the entity's face is obscured by Josh's head, this shot is ingrained in viewers' memory banks forever. Although we see more of the devilish
Most
creature
of
later,
the
his first
movies
appearance is more impactful since
after
it's
the
completely
2000s
out of the
started
blue.
getting
Despite the
really
fact there isn't
dumb,
a single clear
and
shot of the
then
man with the fire
they
in his
just
face,
all
hasn't stopped him
sucked
from
after
becoming a
2010.
horror icon.
What? In the water, the Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring.
What?
Lord of the
What?
Rings saga is replete with all sorts of creatures that don't get big screen time in the mainline entries. I mean, even the giant freaking wizard slaying Balrog doesn't get more than a handful of appearances across 2 of the 3 movies, with most of the monsters in Middle-earth, from Shelob to the Mouth of Sauron, having one big moment before fading into obscurity amongst the mammoth set pieces. One such monster that made quite the splash for all of a scene is the Watcher in the Water, an entity dwelling in the dark body of a lake before the doors of Durin,
Yeah,
leading to
probably
Moria,
the best
disturbed by stones
fantasy
being thrown into its
movies
depths. Director Peter Jackson
ever.
utilizes POV shots and a burgeoning soundtrack to let us know that all is not as it seems underneath the surface before busting out a mass of tentacles that latch onto Frodo. From here, the Watcher seems something like Tolkien's take on a kraken, only more mean-looking, pulling itself onto land with such force that it crumbles the doors of Durin, but with a slap of its noodly limbs. He might be a little CGI around the edges, but this ancient evil is enough to make anyone shiver in their mithril shirt. The Wendigo, Pet
Not
Cemetery
really.
2019. Where most
I think it's
every
a great
entry on this
movie,
list
but-
is a positive portrayal of an excellent
The
memorable
Wendigo,
monster, there's
Pet
got to be one
Sematary.
exception to the rule, and it's
Oh.
the Pet Cemetery remake of
It's 'cause
2018.
it's- yeah,
Because a
the
monster that appears
remake.
for literally
I
seconds,
never
when it
watched
should
the
have been a far
remake.
larger part of the
I
narrative.
didn't even
Where
like
novel
the
focuses
sequel.
on a
I
Wendigo
liked the
as a
very
supernatural
first Pet
force bringing both
Cemetery,
animals and people back from
but
the
the
dead
sequel
in the titular Pet
sucked.
Cemetery,
I watched
in which
it.
buried bodies can be resurrected.
I
for a
definitely
terrible
didn't
price.
watch the
Neither
remake.
the original
I can't
movie nor
stand
its 2019 counterpart play into this creature's
99%
powers
of the
particularly attentively.
remakes.
The 2019 movie does
They all
its best by
suck.
showing but one glimpse of a sketch in a notepad, but the subsequent shadowy creature watching
I
through
didn't
the
even
trees
bother
while Louis
watching
buries
this
his
one.
daughter Ellie is all that we get to actually see of it. It's a blink and you'll miss it moment stipulated by some eerie noises and feels very far too easily missed for something that's such an integral part of the narrative. Considering how much
Yeah.
goofy fun the film could have had with a skeletal deer monster inhabiting the edges of the clearing, this feels like a little bit of a cop-out. Carnictus King Kong. Whilst most monsters with only a small chunk of screen time have us desperately hoping for another glimpse of what original fascinating
I
creation
thought
movie magic has conjured up,
the
Carnictus
one-
and King
this
Kong
is the
have
Peter
entirely
Jackson
opposite effect through their
King
brilliantly
Kong.
disgusting
I thought it
design.
was all
Apparently
right.
the infamous
It's
insect
kind of like
cutscene,
a
one that was
remake
lost from
of the
movie, but
original,
reimagined
but
by Peter Jackson
it
for
wasn't
his 2005
bad.
remake. The Carnictus
I thought it
are
was
the
okay.
undulating, wormy, flaccid dick-looking monstrosities that slowly envelop
And I
poor sailor
usually-
Lumpy
I
limb
can't
by limb as he
stand
attempts to escape
remakes.
with
I
his
really
life.
don't
Spoiler
like
if
'em.
you couldn't tell from
But
the
this
clip
one
he
was
doesn't matter.
okay.
Death by
There are a
sentient
few
disembodied
that are
dong really is the
okay.
most awful way to go. The Carnicks are not
But
pretty,
most
they're
of
not
them
smart,
suck.
and they're not nice. Essentially a stomach with a toothy maw for a face that consumes endlessly among its giant insect pals. Of course, the Wetarexes, or the Arachnoclaws, or the Deplectors all get a shout out for their one scene to shine too, but by God, it's an act of mercy they don't have more screen time. Hydra and the children of Hydra's teeth, Jason and the Argonauts. Honestly, this whole entry is just going to be a love letter to Ray Harryhausen's special effects work, since the man made Dynamation a bona fide work of art over his
I remember
years,
Jason
sculpting
the Argonauts.
monsters for
I love that
painstaking
movie.
stop-motion sequences.
Even
It
though,
would be remiss not to nod
he's
to
right, it
his
was a bunch of
unseen specials that
claymation
were
and
Medusa
shit.
and the Kraken in Clash of the Titans, or the Naga and the Rock of the Seventh Voyage.
Yeah, I
Really,
like
Jason
some of
and the
these
Argonauts'
movies.
sublime creations are the
Clash
ones
of
that
the
really
original
take
Clash
place
of
on
the
this
Titans
one. The Bronze
was
Guardian
great.
of Talos is
The
first
new
to have
ones
its
kinda
one scene
sucked.
done. A
I didn't
behemoth
care for the
statue
new ones
that
that
defends
much.
Crete from those that would steal its treasure. And whilst the towering giant is impressive, he's all but blown
Yeah,
out of the water
Jason
by
the
later
Argonauts
in the film
was
when
an
we
awesome
meet the
film.
many-headed Hydra. Jason is
At
forced into
its
a
time.
choreographed fight with a serpentine creature,
I
attempting
don't
to slay
mind
with a
some of the
sword. Whilst he
claymation
does eventually
films.
win their dance, the
They're
teeth of
okay.
the Hydra are taken and strewn
I mean,
across the ground to
you
create
know
the
it's
children of the
claymation,
Hydra's
you
teeth.
know,
The band
but
of skeletons animated
for back
over a
then,
period
it
of 4
wasn't,
months to
you
fight
know, it was
against
alright.
Jason
It wasn't
and his gang
bad.
in one final showdown.
Claymation
Those
was
scenes are
kinda like their
breathtakingly impressive
CGI.
and have an eerie quality of uncanniness about them from the meticulous stop-motion work which makes them all the more spooky. If any one man has contributed incomprehensibly to movie monsters that deserve endless celebration, it has to be Harryhausen. The Rancor, Return of the Jedi. If the previous entry didn't convince you that practical monsters are the best of the bunch, the Return of the Jedi's Rancor
Well, of
definitely
course.
will. Appearing for what feels like nothing more than an extended cameo underneath Jabba's chambers, the Rancor makes a meal of one unfortunate guard before setting his sights on Luke Skywalker, who's also been dropped into his death pit. What makes the Rancor so great as a monster largely comes from its initial sinister reveal, appearing from behind a metal door that looks like a giant toothy mouth with only a glimmer of its eyes and fangs visible in the darkness. Stepping claws first into the light, the sickly crunch of the Gamorrean beforehand only belies how powerful this hulking behemoth is, making Luke's defeat of the thing even more of a cause for celebration when he bests it with his own mechanical trappings. Jabba's Rancor only gets a few brief minutes in the spotlight, but it's one of the most beloved and revered monsters populating the Star Wars universe. If this beastie didn't stick with you as a kid, you're watching the wrong movies. Angel of Death, Hellboy 2, The Golden Army. Guillermo del Toro's taste for the weird feels almost unquenchable, with his abstract creations making for some of the most uncomfortable and impressionable characters in film history. The Angel of Death from Hellboy 2 fits that mold perfectly, both an incredibly strange figure, but instantly compelling in its presentation, slotting into the Hellboy canon as easily as a giant red demon and his human.
I barely remember
the Angel of Death is a Del Toro
I know I like
that primarily toys with the vision of its creepy
I liked
effects,
Hellboy.
its eyes grow from the wings coming out of its back and a hard chitinous plate in the place of having eye sockets and a forehead.
I thought
Skeletal in
those
its
movies
figure
were
was having a flair
okay.
for the dramatic and
I
enjoying
even
particularly
liked the
creepy
newer
cadence.
one.
The
Yeah,
Angel
I
of
thought
Death
it was
is a wonderful
alright
example
too.
of the magic that Del Toro
Wasn't
and Doug
bad.
Jones make when they get together. The Shape of Water and Crimson Peak, another two examples
They hit
the pair
that
have under their
Dark
weird and wonderful
Elf
belts.
being the
Stanley's head
fucking
It,
villain
Chapter
was
2.
awesome.
There's no way this could be mentioned without special homage paid to The Thing, the founding place of all things Spider Monster.
Yeah, The
from
Thing
Norris's
had some
head in
fucked
John
up
Carpenter's
shit in
1982 movie. The Norris Thing head is
that,
worthy of an entry.
yeah,
all of
the
its own,
head
of
that
course,
turns
alongside
into a
every other
spider,
unique, twisted iteration
that was
of the
fucked
alien
up.
thing that it takes on during
Now, I
its
know
time
they did a
terrorizing remote
remake
Antarctic research
with,
base, but it
was,
celebrates Spiderheads the world
Kate
over with a more
or
recent addition to that one-shot list
what
of
was her
creepy
name?
quality noggins. After all, the assimilated monster might have been the first instance of a decapitated
Kate
human head running
Basincell
around
or
on 8
whatever the
arachnid
fuck
blades,
her
but it
name
certainly
is.
wasn't the last. Paying special
I
reference
can't
to
think
the
of
seminal
the
classic,
fucking
director Andy
name.
Muschietti transforms
Kate
Stanley Urie's
Basincell or
lonesome
some
head
shit.
into
I
another
can't
skittering
remember. I
horror
don't.
show during It Chapter
I
2's
don't
runtime,
remember
especially
what
effective
her
both for its
actual
excitable
name is.
throwback as
Something
well
like
as the
that.
deviation from
She
Stephen
did the
King's source
Underworld
material. What was
movies.
supposed to be a
Kate
stationary head in the fridge turns into
Beckinsale
a
or
child's
something like that.
rampaging bunce roaming free.
But
in
yeah,
one of those
that
sick
head with
shapes
the
that
spider
it takes
was
on
fucked
across
up.
the movies. Both a welcome surprise and a terrifying vision in one gruesome blow. The Trench, Aquaman. Arguably the best part of the movie for its dark tone and incredible execution, this moment just proves
I
what
never
force
heard of
director
this
and
one.
horror aficionado James Wan
The
is in the
Trench.
industry when he's allowed to do his thing. Of course, the trench scene of Aquaman is one of the most memorable points, depicting Arthur and Mera
Aquaman.
besieged by a terrifying
Okay.
spiny group of monsters from the deepest part of the ocean.
If
I'll be
you
honest,
say
there's
so.
one single shot that gives a vague look at these fishy
I
fields
really
beyond,
didn't care
but
that
really,
much
we don't
for the
actually
Aquaman
in
movies.
full until their big moment.
They
So,
kinda
obviously, it's
sucked.
all the same. Humanoid deep-sea fish
Be
that have
honest.
regressed from Atlanteans. The trench move like a giant
That guy
ant
there,
they pulsate
the
together
one who
under
plays
waves,
Ocean
hunting down any and
Master,
all of adventurers
he
in
should have been
territory above the resting
Aquaman,
place of a powerful
not
Triton.
fucking
Embodying
Jason
everything
Momoa.
creepy about the deepest
He
and
looks
darkest parts of
nothing
our
like
oceans.
the
The trench
character
are suitably
at
scary
all.
as the monsters of this universe
Terrible.
are as remarkably
I don't
destructive,
like
providing
Jason
a real
Momoa as
threat,
an
yet,
actor.
unlike
I
the
think
movies,
he
that can often
sucks.
feel as if its superpowered inhabitants
He's
are
a
in
terrible
the Pale
actor.
Man,
He can't
Pan's
act.
Labyrinth. Yet another movie that doesn't let up on original monsters with ever dastardly
Pale
creation
Man,
thrown up
Pan's
on screen.
Labyrinth.
Pan's Labyrinth is a
I'm
treasure
not
trove
sure if
of
I
Guillermo
actually
del Toro's
watched
most
that
intricate and
movie.
interesting beasts that need no
It
more
just-
than a swift feature
I
to
don't know.
solidify them into horror
It
history
didn't
canon.
look
Whilst the
interesting
fauna
to
and
me.
its fairies are
It's
some of
like
the most eerie
basically
and
just
enchanting
little
that crop up
girl's
throughout the narrative. It's the
imagination.
monsters that drop
literally
one-time only
all
appearances
it's
during
about.
Ophelia's tasks that remain the most terrifying. The giant toad is a nice chunk of weirdness, but
So,
it's again Doug
I don't
Jones,
know.
the Pale Man, that has long been revered as
Didn't
one of the
care
best
for
original monster creations
to watch
that only
it.
ever
It just
appears in a
didn't
single
interest
scene.
me.
And of course, one of the most downright scary of them all. Emaciated, skeletal, and pale, as the name suggests. Really, the creature has no eye sockets, but rather little holes in its palms that he pops his eyeballs into, hunting Ophelia with splayed fingers in a sick rendition of reindeer antlers across his face. Feasting on fairies and children alike, the Pale Man is evil incarnate, and his appearance is only strengthened by how little time we actually spend with him. 5 minutes is 5 minutes too many.
Mutated Rat Rampage. For a film that prides itself on giant mutated creatures that we only got to see a handful of the
I
things,
liked
Rampage's
Rampage.
runtime is a true
I
pride.
thought it was an awesome
Spending most of
movie.
its budget on a giant, mostly benevolent gorilla, an evil crocodile, and a nasty flying wolf who ingested a genetic pathogen that causes them to exponentially grow in size, strength, and aggression, the film is a nice recreation of the video game of the same name for the most part,
Yep.
as the monsters attempt to survive against military forces. The causes of this genetic nightmare is shown in the opening scenes, where a space station is destroyed by a test subject and spreads debris across the US. The test subject itself, however, is both itself a neat, underused monster and a little Easter egg reference to the game's added fourth character, Larry the Rat. Larry appears in the movie briefly to set off the catastrophic chain of events and looks crazed as hell whilst he's doing it. We see him for one scene of destruction where he's lit exclusively in flames, and they suit him particularly well. Stay Puft Marshmallow Man, Ghostbusters. A true icon of the 1980s movies, the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man has long since ingrained himself into our hearts and into our bank accounts too, making up a disproportionate amount of merchandise to cash in on the squidgy menace since his debut.
Everybody remembers
of course, the
that
Stay Puft
character.
mascot comes from Ghostbusters, where supernatural activity is taking over New York and requires the
Everybody
proper
loves the
energy
movie
interference of a
Ghostbusters.
group of those who bust ghosts.
The new
At the
ones
end of the
aren't
movie,
all
the
that
team of
great.
four are faced with
They're
an
okay.
interdimensional threat that will take on the form of
But
whatever
this
they
last
so
one they
choose,
just
with
did
Trey
kind
selecting
of
the
sucked.
marshmallow brand in
I
an
didn't
attempt
care
to select
for it,
something
really.
that couldn't possibly destroy them. That's the thing with ghosts, though. They don't play fair. Stay Puft is blown up to gigantic proportions, wrecking the city like a pillowy Godzilla and roaring in the face of those who would defy the creature's reign of
I
terror.
think they
He's
got the
destroyed
brother
the air
and
by
sister
crossing the
wrong.
proton streams, and
It
thankfully
should have been
hasn't
the
been
brother
seen
who
again
was
since.
the
With the
nerd
2016 remake,
taking
Computernet
over
rounded Stay
for
Puft to a ghostly
Spankler.
balloon instead.
And
more recently,
the
Ghostbusters
older,
Afterlife
the
gave
girl
us the
should have been
teeny
the older
cute versions
sister.
of Stay Puft instead. Demon,
It was
Lovely
like a
Molly.
ditz.
Lovely Molly is one of those films that's like Marmite. You either love it or you hate its tentative slow pace and violent outbursts. Not quite keen on telling the audience any information
I don't know,
that
I
could
never
be useful
seen
to
this
discerning
one.
its plot, Lovely Molly is happy to regale an audience with gross visuals and a loose story of a possessed young woman. This would be the titular Molly, a newlywed and recovering heroin addict that has returned to a childhood home with her new husband. Only the past isn't quite as done with her as she thinks. There's strange shrines,
Yep,
lots
never
of
heard of
death,
this one.
and a disorientating scene where Molly wanders out naked in the night and into the arms of some sort of creature. A man wearing the head of what appears to be a horse. It's unclear whether this is an all-too-human monster in a mask or one from hell, with two glowing eyes in the darkness, just about all that's visible aside from his distorted head.
Whatever.
This one peep of a monster is all we need to solidify the supernatural presence of Lovely Molly, and is perfectly scarce otherwise. Colin the Janitor, Silent Hill. Silent Hill's legacy as a video
Well,
game movie that didn't quite live
okay.
up to the potential of its source material.
First of
was
all,
probably solidified by its choice
it
for
doesn't
game
follow
monsters
the
that
source
bear no
material.
relevance to the movie world.
It
When
does
verses
something
represented
completely
the second
different.
video game's protagonist's sexual anxiety, the movie threw them in for
The
appeasement
first
alone,
one
resulting in some
was
unhappy
okay,
fans
but
despite
again,
seeing their
it's
favorite
supposed to
gaming
be about
motifs
a
on the big
man
screen.
going after
Still,
his,
Silent Hill still offered up some
looking
original
for his
monster
daughter,
mayhem outside
and
of
they
its
didn't
sexy,
do that.
horrifying hospital staff.
They
and the
changed it to
ever-imposing
the
curtain
wife
head,
looking
with
for the
utterly
husband,
rank Colin the
which was
janitor,
dumb.
appearing for one brief
And they
sequence
did that
when his
in both
corpse comes to
movies, and
life
I don't
when
know
Silent Hill
why.
shifts into its
It was
otherworldly
dumb.
domain. He crawls along the floor
It
to
pissed
Rose
me
while
off.
flashing his tongue wildly, bound by barbed wire for his molestering behavior.
Like
in
I said,
life
the
and
first
trapped in
movie
Silent
was
Hill for his
okay.
crimes.
The second one was
Dilophosaurus,
terrible.
Jurassic Park. Of all the deaths in Jurassic Park, the Dilophosaurus definitely offers up the most gnarly one. Whilst it's one thing being crushed by a Tyrannosaurus Rex,
I like
down by
the
a pack
Jurassic
of
Park
velociraptors,
movies.
it's
I thought they were
entirely
all
another to have
fairly
venom
decent.
spat in your face
The
before you
new
torn
ones,
apart in the
yeah,
confines of a claustrophobic
they're
park
okay,
interior.
but they're
Yikes.
not really all that
Dennis
great.
Nedry rings rather hollow,
That
though.
last
The
one
whole
wasn't
reason the
really
computer
that
programmer
good.
gets himself into this
I
mess
didn't
in the
care
first
for it all
place
that
is
much.
by
It was
trying to betray
okay,
the titular part
but it
by
just,
stealing
I don't know,
dinosaur
it fell
embryos to
flat.
sell to a rival company. Stumbling around in a storm after
The
losing his
last
way to the
movie
docks,
did.
Nedry is faced with the frilled menace after antagonizing the creature with a stick and threatening to run the dinosaur over. A face full of goopy venom later, and he's not so smart after all. There's a clear reason Jurassic Park won an Oscar for Best Visual Effects. So it's best to just be thankful that we didn't get to see his actual demise realized in full actuality on screen too. One little taste of the Dilophosaurus was more than enough. If there's one thing that's worse than just plain old spiders, it's finding spiders in places they shouldn't be. That's the name of the game when it comes to Kong Skull Island, which seems intent on traumatizing audiences
movie
in
was
the most
okay.
dramatic way possible by
I didn't think it was that great, but it was alright.
Of gigantic monsters.
Wasn't
Skull
terrible.
crawlers, Maya squid, and
Skull Island,
as
Kong
well as Big
Skull
Old Kong
Island
himself,
wasn't bad.
Skull Island could have happily kept some secrets on what insects lurk in its strange forests. Instead, we were shown what's known as Mother Longlegs in all her spindly glory. Surely a loving homage to the bug pit of the original movie, as well as a knowing wink to the infamous cannibal holocaust scene, director Jordan Vogt-Roberts crafts a spider with bamboo limbs that spears through the face of an unlucky soldier, before raining down fleshy hell out of its torso and threatening the rest with its pincers. Though it's taken down fairly easily in the end, it's a standout scene for just how expertly Vogt-Roberts pulls it from nowhere, turning a forest stroll into a hellish nightmare with the shift of a single stalk. Brundlefly, the Fly. The Fly is David Cronenberg's disgusting ode to all things stinky and gross, merging Jeff Goldblum's DNA with that of a house
The
fly
first
in
Fly
such a
was
unique
awesome.
incident
The
while
sequel
testing
kind of
teleporting
sucked.
technology.
Wasn't
As
all
the
that
film
great,
goes
but
on,
the first
Seth
one
Rogen
was
evolves
alright.
further and
Wasn't
further
bad.
into a mighty
I've never
monster,
seen the
until he
original
quite literally
The
shapes
Fly,
his skin to
like
become
from the
Brundlefly.
50s or
A state he wants to
60s.
combine with his
I've never
girlfriend
seen
Ronnie
the
and their
original.
unborn child
I've always
inside her.
wanted to watch
The
it
Brundlefly
though.
himself, the little scamp,
But yeah,
only appears for one
this
scene
was
by
a
rule
pretty
of
good
the
movie.
narrative. Brundle's metamorphosis
Wasn't bad.
continue to get more extreme throughout the movie.
Though it's been
And
years
whilst
since
this
I've
seems to
seen
be his
it.
final form,
I mean, it's
it
just
ends with the
fucked up the
Brundlefly
way
conjoining himself
he was
with a metal doll by
transforming.
accident. Ronnie manages to
It was
escape her
really
confinement for the
weird.
bloody scrambling, and Brundle fuses himself with
Kinda
nothing inside his
gross.
telepod, making for one more monster that only appears for a scene too. Behemoth the Mist. Chock full of invented monsters.
I did not like The Mist. I thought The Mist sucked.
Upon our protagonists as they
It
attempt to escape
wasn't
the
a very
strange,
good movie.
all-encompassing weather phenomenon. When David and his son head to a supermarket to go
I just
shopping,
didn't
they
think it was
realize
that
it's
great.
the last time
Big
their
giant
lives will resemble
monsters in
any
the
sense
mist.
of normalcy. The pair become trapped
Ooh.
inside with a host of other shoppers as the thick white mist rolls in, bringing with it alien-looking monsters that are not of this earth. There's plenty that could make the cut for this entry, since we see all sorts of weird and wonderful beasties as each set piece unfolds in the movie. But
I
by
didn't think
far the
that
most
was that
memorable
great.
and interesting lies in the behemoth.
Not
True to
really.
its name, it's the first monster to really give a sense of scale to the
Yeah,
monsters
if you
of the
say
mist,
so.
appearing almost at the end of the movie to tower over David and his friends in their car as they drive under its gigantic form. Covered in tentacles, boasting 6 double-jointed legs, and not giving a single f about anything on the floor beneath it, it truly is an epic monster that makes all the better
You
of an
say so.
impression from its short-lived appearance. Meg Mucklebone's Legend. Legend is a movie that sounds all sunshine and smiles on the surface, with a flock of unicorns
Great movie.
and a wholesome fairy tale
80s
comprising the
flick.
bulk of
Fantasy.
the fantastical adventure. With Tom Cruise,
It's a
front
little
and center.
weird, a
But
little
when you get
strange.
looking about into what's
That's
actually going on,
pretty
you
cool
see it as
movie.
a force of evil attempting to turn the world into eternal state of night. You find horses sucked into swamps, and devilish Tim Curry as the antagonist, and none other than Ridley Scott orchestrating the whole terrifying ordeal from the director's seat. Right, of course. And during this feverish dark fantasy tale, we meet Meg Mucklebones, a swamp witch comprised entirely of practical effects, whose rubbery green appearance is one sure to stick with you long after watching. Screeching as she converses with Cruiser's Jack, she's killed quite literally with his kindness as he showers her with compliments to distract her from her sudden decapitation. Watching this title as a child was a one-way ticket to sleepless nights thanks to Meg. But she's an awesome example of mind-blowing effects
Wasn't that
working
scary?
all the same.
Okay. Well, that seems to be the end of the video. Watchculture Horror is the name of the channel. Check it out if you want. It was alright. But being from the UK, they got half that shit wrong. Like I said, the UK, the Brits, they look at entertainment, movies, that kind of stuff. They're a little bit different. Yeah, like I was saying earlier in the video, I'm not a huge fan of a lot of the stuff that comes from the UK. It's a hit or miss with them. Half of it's alright, and then half of it's not. In this video, they were pretty much, half their shit was wrong. They just see things a little bit differently, and apparently that's the way it is in UK, but I'm telling you, most of that shit was absolutely BS. It was wrong. Let me know what you think. If you think they got most of it right, or they got several of those movies wrong. The monsters in them or whatever. It's like their humor. I am not a fan of, English UK humor. It's really dry and it sucks. I don't like it. Some people do. I don't. I think it's terrible. I don't like a lot of their comedies. Except for Shaun of the Dead. That was a great movie. I liked that movie. But most of their stuff, when it comes to comedy, really sucks. Anyways, that's all I have for you this week. They're okay, I guess, but if they're going to get half their shit wrong, they got to do better. So I doubt if I watch them again just because of that. Watchculture Horror is the name of the channel. Check it out if you want. That's all I have for you this week. Thanks for watching with me. And I'll see you on the next one.